from Palmerston North Sunday school teacher to dancing topless at Paris' famous cabaret. Former showgirl Margaret Austin recalls her days on stage in Paris. Palmerston North, where I was brought up in the 1950s, was a bleak place. It was still post-war, and conservatism bordering on repressiveness was the theme. The only excitement was provided by the railway line that ran through the centre of the town until the city fathers thought to remove it to the furthest reaches. My beautiful spirited mother, a former school teacher, was typically proper. She produced the thinnest possible cucumber sandwiches for afternoon teas with the female intelligentsia of the town. My father, much older, was distant, mysterious, and had been a reporter on Truth. A neighbor once told me in hushed tones that he had also frequented the opium dens of Wellington's notorious Haining Street. I was awed into silence. I respected my mother and adored my father. The two extremes they represented were to form the parameters between which I've lived my life. Margaret Austin's days as a topless showgirl at Paris' Folies Bergère are behind her, but she still trips the tango floor in Wellington. My mother's influence was the easiest and most obvious one to follow: obedience to authority, academic success, appropriate friends, even a stint as Sunday school teacher. Thence to Wellington and Victoria University, where, to the strains of "If You're Going to San Francisco," I fell in love. I should have become a school principal. Instead, married, living in Port Chalmers in a cottage that overlooked a graveyard. Was this a hint from the universe? I accepted the invitation of two female friends single to spend 3 months in Italy. My liberal husband let me go. Inspired by the Folies Bergère and the Moulin Rouge, legendary Australian showgirl Marissa Burgess is bringing a 15-strong burlesque troupe to New Zealand this week. The damage was quickly and irrevocably done. Stunned by an old culture and new experiences, there was no way I could be content with New Zealand again. So I set off to the other side of the world once more on a passenger liner, because that's what you did in the 70s, and took 6 weeks to get to England. Kiwis are taught to have high expectations of London, yet I found myself disappointed, because, despite its size, there was too much that was familiar. And of course everybody spoke English. Marissa Burgess' Cabaret de Paris opened in Auckland on Saturday night, and plays Wellington on Sunday before spreading its feather boas further afield. It wasn't until I crossed the channel that my nameless yearning morphed into an unexpected, extraordinary reality. Intending to spend only a few days there at the tail end of a summer European tour, I ended up staying 3 years. The lessons such a city had to teach a raw colonial like me were many, exhilarating, and salutary. I graduated with self-acceptance, far more understanding and tolerance of fellow human beings, an enhanced sense of fun, and an even greater eagerness for the unknown. Fast forward to Paris. Paris de Cabaret dancers Megan Chadwick and Marissa Burgess, the famed Moulin Rouge showgirl, are bringing Paris to the Pacific this week. You are a woman, therefore you have breasts. 1980. A warm summer night. The Rue du Faubourg Montmartre. This street, beloved by Henry Miller, reaches out and grabs you as you come out of the metro. It seems as if the local pickpockets, pancake sellers, gigolos and African wallet sellers are all trying to snatch a piece of you. Margaret Austin, you could make friends with drug addicts, sex performers, and people you met in bars, that being naked or nearly so for work was quite the norm. Kevin Stent, Fairfax NZ. If you manage to evade them, and head off down one of the side streets, you suddenly catch sight of the neon-lit facade of one of the world's most celebrated music halls, the Folies Bergère. Names like Miss Tingett, Maurice Chevalier, and Josephine Baker hang in the air. The night before, in a bar, someone tipped me off to jobs going in the chorus line of this illustrious establishment. It already been refused work in a nothing special club just off the Champs-Élysées. The choreographer had been sympathetic, but no, she needed girls with more shape. So, with only a little dance training, without knowing anyone, without a CV, and without an appointment, what was I doing here? But once through the stage door, when I requested to see the artistic director, no one turned a hair. They called Margaret Austin La Petite Anglaise. She had time to reflect in the dressing room. I was shown into an office, and had just time to take in the posters of semi-naked women which adorn the walls, when Michel Giamatti appeared. This man was a Paris legend, having come from his native Hungary as a youth and promoted his talent by drawing costume designs on the pavements outside the Tuileries. Though I didn't know that then. He was short, pink-complexioned, elderly, and formidably imperious. To forestall him, I spoke at once. In bad French, I came out with, "Good evening, monsieur. I am a dancer, and I heard you are looking for girls for the chorus line." But. And I had to get in before he did. I haven't got breasts. The Folies Bergère was famous for its big and fast-changing sets. This is the star and chorus line, featuring their own Eiffel Tower. What I meant to intimate was that I had a small bosom, and that this might be a drawback, but in my picturesque French, that's how it sounded. Giamatti's face remained expressionless. "Madam," he intoned, "are you a woman?" This was Margaret Austin's Liza Minnelli look, in 1980. "And you are not a man?" was the next question. My interrogator's next question knocked me for a 6. "Are you, by any chance, a transvestite?" Dumbfounded, I stayed silent. "You are a woman," declared Giamatti, with a faint smile. "Therefore you have breasts. You wish to work in my theatre. Let us have a look at you." And he swung on his heel and left the office. My bluff had been called. I hadn't known what to expect as the outcome to my gate crash. The last thing I'd thought he'd get was an on-the-spot audition. I realized this was a topless show. There was nothing else for it. I stripped off my clothes down to my knickers, thrust my feet back into the high heels I'd worn, took one more nervous look at the poster girls around me, and Giamatti was back. He eyed me narrowly from the doorway. "Put your hands on your hips and walk towards me," he commanded. "Smile." I smiled, imagining my mouth full of perfect teeth. With another faint smile, my interlocutor pronounced the verdict. "You shall have what you came for. I am offering you a job in my theatre. Come back tomorrow for your first rehearsal." And that is how a 34-year-old ex-Sunday school teacher from Palmerston North with very little dance training and very small breasts talked her way into the chorus line of the Foley's Bergère. Life as La Petite Anglaise. It's been described as a pleasure factory. Its mystique, its glamour, and its superficiality all enchanted me. I was known as a mannequin nu or naked mannequin. My colleagues and I were packaged in monstrous sets of false eyelashes and all-over pancake makeup until we all looked the same, then wheeled out to perform routines in which we all made identical movements. I came in for a lot of dressing room teasing because of the streaks of uneven makeup I left on my buttocks or my back. I was also notorious for sagging false eyelashes. 300 workers were involved in getting the production underway and moving every night. There were performers, stagehands, dressers, electricians, and those who looked after the props. Performers were strictly ranked from the female stars, often imported from places like Martinique. Then there were the classically trained dancers, who did the can-can, there were the featured performers, and finally, on the bottom rung of the ladder, us mannequins. Distinguished by the larger amount of flesh we had on display, our work required the least formal training. Actually, performing 6 nights a week was a bit like school. The theatre was run with clock-like precision. The timetable was the same every night, there were bells and carefully intoned instructions piped into dressing rooms, there were black marks for lateness, there was even a genial headmaster to keep everyone in order. Your Jacques nicknamed me La Petite Anglaise, New Zealand? Where's that? And treated me with indulgent curiosity. For stage machinery, the Foley's was hard to beat. Lido might have had a swimming pool and elephants, the Foley's had a gigantic staircase that had to be maneuvered into place with pulleys, shouts and expert handling at the start of the show. My position on the staircase was 5th step up, from where I could watch the entrance of all the other performers, notably the male can-can soloist, thin and nervous in his tight black trousers. The off-stage sights were equally fascinating: stagehands amongst stacked piles of scenery, or perched high in the flies on tiny precarious platforms. Foley's was also famous for the number of tableaux it was able to mount in the space of a 3-hour show. There were 40, with different costumes to go with each. That meant a backstage crew of dedicated individuals working full-time to maintain costumes, hats, accessories and jewelry. Every night I would arrive to find in my dressing room drawer 6 pairs of freshly laundered gloves and a stack of G-strings. My best friend in the dressing room was Aude, who sat next to me. Classically trained, she was unable to find work appropriate to her level, and had to make do with the chorus line. The others were a mixed bag and included girls from the French colonies. Night after night, I watched with fascination their transformation from plain to pretty, and from pretty to stunning. Interval, there was often a visit from the boy dancers. In their trademark orange towel dressing gowns, they would swan into our territory, suggest improvements to our makeup, and swan out again after a quick drink just in time for the second half. Side saddle on my white wooden horse during the finale of my last performance, the whole panoply of the Foleys revolved before me, first the applauding public, then the froth of feathers that marked the stars' lineup, then the wings and the watching stage hands, to the face of my favorite dresser visible above a bundle of boas, and finally to the mannequins, smiles deep frozen. The stage stopped rotating and stars, dancers, crew and mannequins made for the wings. I followed more slowly. The machinery of the Foley's Bergère, I reflected, would work just as well if one of its parts was replaced overnight. The tango floor still beckons. I was to return to New Zealand in the late 1980s, with the manuscript for my first book under one arm and a second husband under the other. The book went on to be published, though the husband got crossed out in the proofreading process. After 14 years away, what was it like to be back in New Zealand? With no drug dens to explore, no music halls to gate crash, no film stars to come across in nightclubs, and what was I to do? Most difficult of all was the question, or the challenge, of how to somehow put to use what I'd learned. Particularly when a good deal of what I'd learned was in direct conflict with what I'd been taught. For instance, that you could make friends with drug addicts, sex performers, and people you met in bars, that being naked or nearly so for work was quite the norm for some people, that to stay up all night because you were having so much fun didn't hurt, that above all you needn't listen to those around you who say you can't do that. My family accept me, albeit with bemusement. New friends have largely replaced old friends. Give dinner parties in my home on Wellington City Fringe. There is a new vocation as an Airbnb host, and along with that a mission, world peace through hospitality, respect, and laughter. Down the road there are Sweet Mother's Kitchen and the Basque Bar and Courtney Place. And a tango floor that beckons regularly.